we're gonna find real treasure. I'm very nervous about these scorpions. I might be lost. Hamada! Hamada? I think I went down too far. Should I go down deeper? I'm just gonna look. Every good treasure hunt begins with a call to action. Oh my God. Mine was a, whoa, Fateh 1 Iranian hypersonic missile.
Iran has retaliated, hitting many countries. Thousands, including tourists, have been caught up in the strikes.
I just heard another blast. The last one was so heavy that it made the window rattle. I'm a bit nervous right now. I'm on the 4th floor of this building. If this building were to be hit, I feel like I'm not in an ideal place right now. I don't know what an ideal place would be. I came here for one thing. A lost city in the marshes of southern Iraq. Akkad, the capital of the world's first empire. A mystery that archaeologists have been chasing for millennia. But I had a lead.
The State Department is urging Americans in countries around the region to get out if they can.
There comes a time in every journey, we're getting out of here, where a reasonable man knows to cut his losses and go home. The story I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with that man. So at this point, pretty much every embassy has evacuated their citizens from the Middle East. The airspace has since been closed because the sky is filled with missiles. The US Embassy has advised me to take a boat across the Red Sea into Egypt and then to fly out from there immediately before their airspace closes. So I'm getting out of the Middle East. I'm being safe. I'm being responsible. I think. In my defense, if you were to rank the things that are most likely to get me killed one day, missiles stack pretty low. The most recurring threat to my longevity is one sentence. I read something on the internet. There's a document in Italy, over 3,000 years old, that shouldn't exist. At least, not like this. It's called the Turin Papyrus, a map showing a route into Egypt's eastern desert, to gold, emeralds, and cities still lost to sand and time. Now, Egyptologists, avert your eyes. I'm about to take something beautifully complex and flatten it like a pancake, because the Turin Papyrus is the world's oldest treasure map. And as far as I know, nobody's ever tried to actually follow it. At least, not yet. There's this image of Egypt you carry around your entire life. An ancient land of lost tombs, buried treasure, forgotten maps. And then, there's Cairo. My flight to Istanbul is in 32 hours, but I fell down a Wikipedia hole, and hypothetically, what if instead I follow a 3,000-year-old treasure map into the desert? You know, just to see where it leads. I do understand there are one or two flaws with this plan, so I weighed the risks in a calm and methodical fashion. Now, I do understand that if the conflict were to escalate and the airspaces were to close, I could be trapped in the Middle East indefinitely, which would suck. But also, I feel like it would be irresponsible not to at least check it out. There's just one problem. So the thing about papyrus is the beginning of the scroll disintegrates from handling. The ending of the scroll cracks under pressure. So oftentimes ancient papyri are missing both the beginning and the end. The Turin Papyrus survives in fragments. Archaeologists can decipher the middle portion with reasonable confidence, but the ending, the part that shows where the route eventually leads, is missing. Lost, which is annoying when your plan is to use it for actual navigation. Now, unfortunately, the surviving sections do not lead to a jaunty tourist zone with a gift shop. It leads to a place that's been killing travelers for thousands of years, the Eastern Desert. To which you might be wondering, Steve, have you been taking your medicine? To which I would say, don't worry, I have a plan. And also, no, I haven't. For decades, researchers have analyzed it with geology, satellite imaging, inscription analysis, but there is another possibility. There's a phenomenon in neuroscience called cognitive closure, the brain's tendency to fill in missing information in order to complete a pattern. It's why optical illusions work, and why, theoretically, a man who spent 30 years making fake ancient Egyptian papyri for German tourists might subconsciously understand a real ancient Egyptian papyrus, meaning the missing portions of the Turin Papyrus are gone, but the logic behind them might not be. Now you may reasonably question why, if scholars have been puzzling over this for centuries. I would outsource the problem to some low-grade papyrus artist in the Cairo Bazaar. But that type of thinking is exactly why you are not an innovator. Now, I'm not going to hire just any low-grade papyrus artist. I want a visionary, someone with prodigious cognitive closure. And to find him, I have devised a rigorous scientific screening process.
أنت تتكلم عربي.
So do you do custom paintings here? Here?
He's a professional artist.
I was wondering if instead of writing my name in hieroglyphics, you just draw my face.
Destroy?
Not destroy, just draw.
Actually, you can.
No?
Yeah, he will draw in your face.
No, he can't do anything.
What happened in your face?
No, nothing happened to my face. I just was wondering, I'm gonna leave the mask and the glasses on, and I want you to just paint what you imagine my face is.
I don't know. You can turn off your mask.
No, I'm gonna leave the mask on.
Why?
I wanna see what he imagines my face to look like.
I have a small face. Small face.
Can you
With
draw
beard?
just
With beard?
can you draw a small face with a beard?
No.
They seem to think that I have some sort of ulterior motive, when really I just want them to draw my face. That's all.
I have cat.
You have cats?
Yes, this cat.
Oh.
Like a face.
That is like a face. I'm getting a little worried.
We can try.
Yeah? The early results were concerning. Nice.
No.
The current version of Picasso.
This is an accurate, please sketch of Jesus. Now this artist is very talented. He's also very wrong. I look like a Disney goblin. This artist interpreted my face less as a human being and more as a horrible medical condition. I collected 6 samples. Each failed uniquely, but 2 were different. 2 showed legitimate promise. This woman looked at a man in a face mask and saw earrings, duck lips, angry brow, and a popped collar. Clearly her cognitive closure was off the charts. More importantly, they were the only studio that actually knew what the term papyrus was. The second selection was based on a more nuanced set of criteria. Specifically, he was very nice. Also, his work was the only one that vaguely resembled the visual vernacular of ancient Egyptian art, which in the field of experimental cartographic reconstruction is what scientists call a promising lead. Fill in the things.
He is not creative.
But this part is like a black mountain if he just fills it in like a black mountain. I think it's hieratic script. Hieratic, yeah.
Random letters.
Yeah, just random letters is fine.
Maybe he wrote something without any meaning. He didn't understand anything about the history.
Thank you so much. So I chose both because when you're commissioning a 3,000-year-old map from the Cairo Bazaar, you want craft and you want vision, even if the vision looks like that. Unfortunately, her map led to a restricted militarized zone.
Not allowed.
But we'll get to that later.
Chaos rippling around the world. Left frustrated,
The U.S.
scared,
State
and
Department has
stranded.
told all Americans
Tonight, U.S.
to
embassies and
depart
consulates
now
are coming
from
under
the Middle
attack
East.
and Americans stranded across the region. Late today, a drone
Okay,
strike.
I am going to be responsible about this. 4 days, hard cutoff. If I do not find anything in 4 days, I will turn around, I'll come back to Cairo, I'll get on a plane, and I will leave. I know what this looks like. Steve is having a manic episode. Steve saw a treasure hunt in that Nicolas Cage documentary and is trying to emulate it because he is an unhinged man-child. Officer, I can explain. Before you write me off and assume that this video can only end in me getting lost and dying of heat stroke, you need to understand something about Egypt. You see, I'm not some one-off white fetishist doing stupid things because Egypt is cool. No. I come from a long and noble lineage of white fetishists doing stupid things because Egypt is cool. The relevant question is whether or not this map might actually lead to something real. And strangely, the answer involves a man putting dead people in his smoothies, and then another guy having a funeral for a tube of paint. So put on your history caps, kids, because, as I said, I come from a long and noble lineage of white fetish. Story begins with a dead accountant being stripped naked at a dinner party. Napoleon had just invaded Egypt and introduced Europe to a civilization older and stranger than anything they'd ever imagined. Within a decade, half of Europe was wearing scarab brooches, and the other half were building obelisks in their gardens. While Egyptians robbed tombs for gold, Europeans robbed tombs for paint and party tricks. In Victorian England, if you were wealthy and well-connected, you might be invited to a mummy unwrapping party. These were exactly what they sound like. A host would acquire a mummy and invite friends over for an evening of polite conversation, drinks, and then, after dessert, they would gleefully strip a corpse naked, distributing any jewelry and amulets as party favors. It was like a Victorian gender reveal, but with a dead accountant from 1200 BC. He's a boy, and he spent his entire existence preparing for the afterlife. You have to understand that for centuries, Europeans saw mummies less as sacred dead and more as multi-purpose consumer products. Drollinger's famous L'Intérieur de Cuisine hangs in the Louvre and contains, as part of its warm domestic shadows, the remains of human beings. They called it mummy brown, popular pigment made from ground Egyptian remains. Artists painted sunsets with dead people. When artist Edward Burne-Jones realized what was in the tube, he was so horrified, he held a funeral for his paint and buried it in his garden. And because humanity can always make things worse, they did. Bet you didn't know that eating mummified human remains has the same curative properties as ibuprofen, and that's because it doesn't. But that didn't stop anyone. The popular cure-all mummia was the Victorian Pepto-Bismol. Headache? Mummia. Irritable bowels? Mummia. Sad? Why don't you try eating some ground-up person? And in the Egyptian tradition of fooling gullible foreigners, this led to a boom in counterfeit mummies. At some point, it is entirely possible that some poor, recently deceased peasant from Cairo was wrapped in linen, dunked in tar, shipped to Europe, and eaten by a princess who thought she was ingesting sacred antiquity. Then they discovered Tutankhamun's tomb, and the entire planet briefly forgot what other shapes were. The reason Egyptomania has such a hold on us is probably not mysterious. We claim we're drawn to the archaeology, but that's just the socially acceptable excuse. I think what really draws us in is harder to explain. Egypt doesn't feel ancient in the way that Greece or Rome feel ancient. Rome feels historical. Egypt feels mythological, almost magical, like it belonged to an earlier version of humanity that understood something we forgot. And every once in a while, just enough emerges from the sand to make that fantasy feel plausible. Even after generations of organized tomb robbing, and this happened almost immediately, by the way. Some tombs were robbed within decades of burial. But even after Greek conquest, Roman conquest, medieval scavenging, colonial extraction, black market looting, Egypt still keeps producing treasure. Still. Egypt is so saturated with buried history that new finds happen with almost absurd regularity. A construction crew digs foundations near Luxor, ancient tombs. Farmers clear land in the Nile Valley, statues. Someone surveys a hillside in Sahara, a priest buried with an emergency spellbook for demon attacks. And if this much survived theft for 3,000 years, what hasn't been found? What's still hidden under dunes shifted by centuries of wind? Or in valleys tourists drive past every day without realizing kingdoms may sleep beneath their tires? Undeniably out there somewhere, in the silence and heat and endless stone, there are still sealed doors. Still names unread for the first time in millennia. Still chambers holding the final possessions of people who thought they were preparing for eternity. Egyptomania never really died, because Egypt still feels unfinished. It's not fully discovered. A civilization that buried so much of itself beneath the earth that even now, the sands still glitter with the possibility that somewhere out there in the desert, history is waiting for someone to open the door. So it is no less than 100 degrees in Luxor. We're gonna find a taxi cab.
Taxi?
I might need a cab for like 2 or 3 days. I'm trying to go out to the eastern desert.
Now you need papyrus,
No.
Factory
I have a map and I want to follow the map.
Papyrus.
No. This is the map.
What is this?
I'm trying to follow this map.
Papyrus?
Yeah. So it's like a copy of an older map.
Here, factory papyrus.
No. I want to follow.
Oh.
The artist did 2 versions of it. No, those are mountains. It's upside down. Called the Turin papyrus. Oh no, I don't want to go to the factory of papyrus.
No, buy. I know.
No, I don't want to go.
Local market.
Is it possible?
No, possible. No problem.
I'm trying to follow this old map. Yeah. So I think we're here. I'm trying to get here.
Yeah. If you want same this, I give it you a good one. This is not a quality, my friends. It's okay.
How far is it to this?
In Egyptian 1,000.
1,000 Egyptian to go there?
Yeah.
Now at this point I should clarify something. It may appear that I am asking taxi drivers to decipher something that I found in a cereal box, but this is a historical document, or it's supposed to be. So that ancient script on the Turin papyrus, it's been deciphered. It describes gold, quarry sites, and landmarks in the eastern desert. So, once you know what you're looking at, those cartoonishly insane pink and black mountains aren't random. They match one specific place.
So you want to go to Wadi Hammamat?
Wadi Hammamat.
Wadi Hammamat.
Okay. This is this sure and this was there. That's what you see there.
The what?
I see this before. You want to go Hajj soon once take the boat from and to Ethiopia. You want to see hieroglyphs?
If you've never heard of Wadi Hammamat, congratulations, TripAdvisor's working.
I know this is my job.
Because it is an off-limits archaeological site.
This is not allowed for tourists.
Inside a restricted militarized zone.
Sometimes allowed, sometimes not allowed, the road.
Really?
It's the government.
People die there.
It's dangerous for you, and please dangerous for me. 34 person died yesterday. Yesterday for the gold.
For the gold?
The gold, there's the gold near Wadi Hammamat.
To reach it, you must first get past a militarized checkpoint.
That way,
Really?
sure not allowed.
And if you somehow succeed, your arrival at the ruins will be greeted by a friendly armed guard.
The garden was
Yeah.
a gun there. The garden was a gun, yes.
Now, it could be legitimately illegal to go there, or they could just see me holding the map and assume that I am a garden variety idiot. Maybe restricted military zone really means please pay my cousin $40. Depending who you ask, you either need multiple permits from the Army and Ministry of Antiquities costing thousands of dollars, or a driver named Mr. Smiley who says, don't worry, we try.
We try.
What do you say?
Okay.
So naturally, I chose Mr. Smiley.
If you go, take care.
Take care?
Yeah, but some drive you go, you tell you, okay, I can go with you. But if you go with them, just take care.
Okay. Shukran.
Have a good time.
Shukran.
If you trouble, many army, many police, you wear galabia and scarf from me, and then we try.
So I wear a jalaba?
My galabia and my scarf.
But then what if they ask for my passport and they see that I'm
I
American?
We try. And you don't say them American. You say them I'm English.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm in the back?
You're here.
Okay.
You are two drivers.
Okay. Should we just say I'm going to Marsa Alam? Because if I say I'm going to Wadi Hammamat, that might cause problems.
No. We don't say nothing. You don't talk.
Okay.
We have our way with police.
It's not first time we drive.
We have to make Egyptian way with you, myself.
Do you think it's impossible or it's just very difficult?
Well, I said you anything we try.
Yeah?
And I can't say yes we go, but we try.
It was tough to choose which map to follow. While the more faithful version was meticulous with its detail, the more visionary version has more reference points for navigation. Furthermore, the artist gave our historical document a practical bonus feature.
And this is a mask of Tutankhamun.
My brother, sorry, you can't come on the back.
Oh, okay. Is this the checkpoint?
Yes.
Okay. The closer we got to the checkpoint, the quieter the car became. Even Mr. Smiley stopped smiling. Their plan was simple. Wrap an American in enough fabric, and eventually he becomes Egyptian. Just don't let them see your face. I had some concerns. If this goes bad for me, I could get deported. If this goes bad for them, they could lose their licenses and their livelihood. Which seems an uncomfortable amount of responsibility to place on a headscarf. There's a very specific moment when a bad idea stops being hypothetical. For me, it was the moment when my driver started praying.
الموضوع اللي خلصنا احنا الموضوع ده. يا راجل ليه؟
Enjoy the desert.
Thank you.
No tourists.
So why did they look for Americans at the checkpoint specifically?
If you said American, it's trouble for us. Tell you something. And we are not like, we love USA people.
Yeah.
If ask anybody which favorite tourist come to Egypt, American. You know, French people.
Are there any more checkpoints or was that the only one?
Yeah, one more.
One more? Is this a checkpoint? Is there someone here?
You stay, huh?
I stay?
Sydney, from Sydney.
Yeah.
From Sydney.
Yeah.
Or Wimbledon.
Oh no, Sydney.
Sydney. Good cheese.
He say he's not allowed to close first.
Yeah. But the guard suddenly had a change of heart because it was his birthday. I forget how old he was turning.
800.
So we gave him a birthday gift. My drivers just ditched me on the side of the highway. Oh shit, a car's coming. Okay, so life update. I guess I'm Australian now. We got good news and bad news. I made it into Wadi Hammamat. They kind of like let me discreetly like run away from the highway, so now I'm just kind of like in the rocks. I have 2 hours. My drivers drove away. They're gonna circle back and come pick me up. The bad news is they're not gonna let us through. We're gonna have to figure out another game plan. This place is so inaccessible that researching it was a complete nightmare. Literally all of my source materials were like old textbooks from like the early 1900s in French. As far as I know, there is no coverage of Wadi Hammamat in any English-speaking Western media, TV, film. The first person to ever cover it is a douchebag with a GoPro, wearing a turban and pretending to be Australian. Let's go. Now you might be thinking that nobody's ever covered this place because who would want to risk violence in prison to get sunburnt in a turban, blowing the journalistic lid off a pile of rocks on the side of a highway? I'm a journalist. Coming here has always been dangerous. Heat, dehydration, isolation. bandits, vipers, scorpions, getting lost, getting arrested, getting amoebic dysentery. Makes a terrible postcard. Anyone that tells you otherwise is trying to destroy you. These are amazing. This is incredible. It's the last place you'd expect to find anything of interest. Yet for 4 millennia, people risked their lives to come here by the thousands. Today it appears like just a pile of ugly rocks on a miserable highway, and that's because it is, at least at first glance. But when you take a closer look, the walls are covered in inscriptions. Not 1 or 2, but thousands. This whole canyon is filled with carvings. Every other wall. It looks like pottery. I'm getting deja vu. Pottery and graffiti. I'm gonna be that guy on YouTube. They look like they keep climbing up. I don't know if that's advisable. That's incredible. Pharaohs, soldiers, priests, quarry workers, traders. Many of them crossed the lethal desert for the mountains themselves, simply because the pharaoh wanted nicer countertops. For over 4,000 years, everyone who crossed through this canyon stopped to carve their name in the guest book. Most of them are just names, scratched into the rock by people who vanished into the frontier and left almost nothing behind. We don't know who most of them were. We don't know if they ever reached where they were going, or if they ever came home. All we know is that for a brief moment, they stood exactly where I'm standing now, sweating beneath the same brutal sun, staring into the same shitty desert, wondering if they were going to make it back alive. And then they walked into the frontier, and the desert took the rest of the story. The ancient Egyptians believed that a person lived on as long as their name was spoken and remembered. So when you see one of those names survive untouched, it feels strangely triumphant. A human being that reached across millennia and succeeded in being remembered. Collapses time in an unsettling way. The past stops feeling abstract, less like archaeology and more like contact. The ancient Egyptian penis. So that's a pharaoh, and that's a wiener, and that's a mouth. You got a little wiener. Yeah, he does too. Why do they all have dicks? That one has boobs and a dick. That is very much anal. Assuming this is some kind of fertility thing. Wandering deeper into the canyon, the centuries begin stacking on top of one another. Greeks, Romans, Persians, Arabs, each one carving over the last. Martelli 1996. Bro, you're ruining it. But every empire that passed through this canyon was ultimately looking for something on the other side of it. This is a watchtower. So this route was super valuable, not just to the ancient Egyptians, but to the Greeks and the Romans too. You see, the ancient Egyptians knew Wadi Hammamat by a different name. They called it Rohinu, the gateway to the inner lands. Because the Wadi was never the destination. It was the door. Beyond it, the eastern desert. Gold, the Red Sea, places that passed from history into rumor. And that's where the map was pointing. I can't stop thinking of an old story, older than Egypt herself, of a mountain where the earth bled green. Empires crossed oceans and deserts to reach it, and one day it was abandoned, and the desert slowly swallowed it whole. It became a myth, the lost emerald mines of Cleopatra, a place that fell out of the world so quietly that even the desert forgets it. Some believe the jewels are still there, the shafts are still there, the temple's still there, waiting for someone to remember it again. The mountain never moved. We just stopped knowing how to find it. At least for a while.
Go, let's go. Army check road is come. Let's go, let's go. People, let's go.
I told myself that I would give myself 4 days, and if I didn't find anything, I would go back to Cairo. But the funny thing is it's now day 5.
Wanna take it to hotel, brother?
No. And I'm going in the completely wrong direction.
Maybe you can just drop me off at like a gas station. We're not going back to Luxor?
No. I understand that this is a bad idea, but emotionally, at this stage, I don't care. There's 2 ways into the desert. We're gonna take the back door.
We're now entering the missing part of the map that has puzzled scholars for centuries. Fortunately, our friend at the bazaar has solved it in an afternoon, and he gave me a free bookmark. Turns out the map leads to a bizarre and concerning interest in camels. Not the most useful landmark, but I have a theory. I saw so many roads going deeper into the desert. The lost emerald mines were said to be somewhere in a stretch of desert called Wadi Hammamat.
The U.S. Embassy in Israel says Americans stuck abroad shouldn't rely on the government for help.
Perhaps it's a coincidence, or perhaps it's cognitive closure. Because in English, Wadi Hammamat means the Valley of Camels. Obviously, I wanted to go by camel, a journey which, by my calculation, would take roughly 8 days. This sounds romantic until you've actually ridden a camel for 20 minutes. Also, the local Bedouin told me no. Also, I don't actually know how to ride a camel. To my Orientalist dismay, Wadi Hammamat was not empty desert in the cinematic sense. It is true wilderness. Remote mountains, extreme heat, no cell service, and an unfortunately healthy population of horned vipers and deathstalker scorpions. While I typically enjoy more enthusiasm than sense, I realized that going solo would be suicidal. I would need the help of the only people that know this desert. The Ababda Bedouin. When I asked them about old ruins hidden in the mountains, they all pointed to one place, a strange abandoned site deep in the ranges, haunted by jinn. They called it Wadi Sakat, and only one of them was willing to take me there. His name was Hamada, and he grew up in this desert. So it's like a toothbrush. I don't know if I did it right. My Bedouin lessons aren't doing very good.
So what happens if the car breaks down out here? We walk? How far is the nearest town?
About 45 2 hours and we will arrive.
Okay.
Did your parents ever take you to Wadi Sakat when you were younger?
Yeah. We don't know about the story, but we don't like to stay here in the area.
Why?
We think there is some jinn or something like this.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot of houses. No one live here, and we're scared to make a tent in the area here.
What happens if you stay?
We don't know, but we think it's not good.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I'm so sweaty. Current status, I have no cell service and my satellite phone is in Istanbul. So I have zero idea what is happening in the outside world. But realistically, I feel like if something really catastrophic was happening, the Bedouin would probably come and get us. Right? Probably. I think I made a boo-boo. Some stories have a bad habit of repeating themselves. 2 centuries ago, another man vanished into these same mountains, chasing the same legend. What happened to him next became one of the most remarkable stories in the history of exploration. What happened to him after that is far more interesting. In 1815, a jeweler's apprentice from France stepped off a boat in Alexandria. He was 28 years old. He had no real money and no family name that could open doors. Instead, he had an education in mineralogy that he'd given himself, as well as whatever the urge is that makes a person look at a map of an empty desert and think, I should go there. He feared that a life could quietly disappear without ever truly beginning. He dreamed of adventure, lost kingdoms, and forgotten treasures swallowed by sand. And I think he wanted what all explorers secretly want, to step into history so completely that history would remember him back. His name was Frederick Caillot, and within 7 years, he would become one of the most important explorers of the 19th century. And within a lifetime, almost no one would remember his name. He charted oases that existed only as rumor. He sailed into Sudan on the back of a military invasion, sketching temples by day while prisoners were executed in camp by night. He disguised himself in Turkish robes and split from the army on a hunch, chasing a story that had been dismissed as local rumor. Weeks later, he was standing before a field of steep, narrow pyramids rising from the desert floor. Meroe, the lost capital of the Kingdom of Kush, a city the Western world had been looking for since Herodotus. Now, this is the part where a rational person would go home. Caillaux kept going. The Viceroy of Egypt hired him to find something else the world had forgotten: the lost emerald mines of Cleopatra. For over 1,000 years, every emerald that reached Rome, every stone Cleopatra wore at her throat, every gem Nero held to his eye while watching the gladiators, came from a single patch of mountains in the eastern desert. Then Rome fell, the mines went quiet, and the location passed out of memory. By the time Caillaux arrived in Egypt, most scholars believed they never existed. It took 2 years, but he found them. The emerald source of the classical world, a ghost ruin collapsing into the mountain. And he was the first outsider to see them in over a millennium. He returned to France a celebrity. They gave him the Legion of Honor. He published volumes that rewrote what Europe understood about Egypt and the Nile. For a moment, the world saw him clearly, long enough for him to know what it felt like. And then the world moved on. His publications were delayed for decades. The second volume of his great work appeared when he was 75, into a world that had long stopped caring. His collections were broken apart and scattered across France, no longer bearing his name. Younger explorers arrived in Egypt with deeper pockets and louder patrons, and did what the world always does to the person who got there first. The mines he rediscovered were never reopened. In the 150 years that followed, only 2 research expeditions ever came back. A few adventurous travelers still wander through, but mostly they've sat forgotten in the desert, waiting for someone else to follow the map. He spent his last 3 decades as curator of a small museum in the same town where he was born. He studied mollusks and became a quiet authority on the taxonomy of seashells. But every night, at his desk, he composed his final work, the book that was supposed to make him permanent. A 30-year labor, an encyclopedia of, not mollusks, but ancient life along the Nile, as though some part of him had never really left the desert. He died with it unfinished. It vanished for over a century before appearing at an estate sale in the American South. 1,000 pages of handwritten French in pencil, belonging to no one. I don't think Caillaux was ever searching for lost kingdoms. Not really. He was searching for something capable of silencing the hunger that had followed him his entire life. A discovery so extraordinary that it could justify the strange ache that had driven him across continents in the first place. He found the pyramids, he found the emeralds, he found the thing he'd spent his whole life chasing. And it worked. But only for a little while. Whatever he felt about the gulf between the man who stood before the lost emerald mines of Cleopatra and the man who cataloged snails at a coastal French museum, he left no record of it. It is 5 in the morning. Hammat is still sleeping, but I'm gonna climb up one of these ridges and see if I can spot anything from the top of the mountain. I think I can climb this. Oh geez. So I've got good news and bad news. I was a bit concerned about cobras, but he was saying that they don't have cobras here. What they have is worse. It's a type of sand viper that's more venomous than the cobra, and they camouflage perfectly. They actually bury themselves and only their eyes poke out of the top. Oh, and they can jump. They like leap out. I want to find a stick. I could use my selfie stick if I want. I don't want my poor selfie stick getting bitten by a viper. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. So if the archaeological team was camping where we were, that means that the ruins probably are around here somewhere. I don't see anything, but it's very pretty. There's one detail about the map that makes me question its legitimacy. The oversized King Tut, located somewhere nearby, is standing over a pile of gold, which, metallurgically speaking, is insane. Gold was everywhere in ancient Egypt. They were burying it with their cats. Green was the problem. Green was rare. The color the desert never gives you. That looks like a hole. That doesn't look natural. There's the hole, and look, there's her walls right next to it. Can I get down there? I can get down there. This is easy. That looks like Roman pottery. Or Egyptian pottery, could be Ptolemaic. I think it's probably Roman. If there's pottery, there must be some ruins around here. Put it back. Oh, there it is. That's definitely carved. Those are chisel marks. There's nothing here, but that's promising. Bunch of little like piles of rubble everywhere. Like over there, it looks like it might have been a house or something, and then right here, it's nothing crazy. Those look like more ruins up there, look, on the top of that hill. How do I get up there? There's a building up there. Look at this. For centuries, people told stories of a place past the last wadi and the last well and the last place any sober person would try to build a civilization, where the earth bled green. Whoa. It almost sounds like pulp fantasy, the lost emerald mines of Cleopatra. And that's because it is. The real name was Mons Smaragdus, which is decidedly less sexy and sounds like a skin condition. I prefer the tabloid version. But it's a lie, because the place was never a mine. Look at that. Whoa. It was a city. This whole valley is full of buildings. There's hundreds of them. Like, look at it. There's like literally buildings all over the hillside, even up there. Temples, storehouses, workshops, homes climbing the valley walls on both sides. An entire settlement hidden in a canyon so toasty that the air hurts your face. Yet people came anyways. For centuries, they crossed the Mediterranean, plodded through the desert, and built a city in the furnace. All for one color. This is so cool. The only emerald source in the entire classical world. There was nowhere else. This place is huge. There are so many collapsed bricks that it just looks like the hillside. But if you look closer, you can see that it's just an entire giant town that has collapsed. There are, I would say, at least 200 houses here. I am going to check all of them. I am going to find artifacts and treasure and I don't know what I'm looking for. Where does one put treasure? Hopefully somewhere convenient. Wow, look at all this pottery. You got here, and then you take another step, you got here. That's definitely Roman. Another couple steps, you got two over here. Could you imagine working here 2,000 years ago? It looks like a fire pit, almost. This was probably a house. Now look at this. I'm literally tripping over pottery. It is everywhere. Oh, it looks like a bottle top. Look at that. When we were in the labyrinth, that combware that I found, that was like a later design. Whoa! This looks different. This looks administrative. I don't know if I want to step on this. All right, we're going. We're going in. Oh, break an ankle. That is nuts. This looks like an excellent place for snakes. It looks like they built some sort of rock cut building over there. We need to get over there. Are those columns? Wow. I'm not sure how stable this is. That looks a little sketchy. Wow, this is so cool. This is awesome. All of 8-year-old Steven's Tomb Raider Indiana Jones fantasies are coming true right now. This is nuts. There's a lot of inscriptions on the wall, but I can't really read any of them. Greek, 1844. Was that coyote? This is so cool. Oh look, evidence of the research team that came here in 2023. Look at this. It's some type of measurement device on the ceiling. This is Ptolemaic, which is a blend of Egyptian and Greek. So you've got Roman columns, Egyptian religious iconography, Greek inscriptions. This is wild. Whatever this was, it was clearly holy. It's like some kind of altar. Whatever was here got removed. Most places die with a war or fire, but disasters leave evidence, and this place didn't. It just stopped, just like the rest of the kingdom. No one announced the end of ancient Egypt. People just slowly stopped believing in it. The processions became less frequent, the money dwindled, the priests switched to horoscopes, and eventually, twilight settled over the temples. The last person who knew what this place was for walked out and didn't realize he was the last. He thought he'd be back next year. He thought there would be a next year. There wasn't. The scary thing about civilizations is they don't usually realize they're ending while they're ending. Surely they left something behind. That looks like a castle. I don't know if I want to climb up there though. They're very cool on the outside, but I was kind of hoping to find some artifacts, and all I'm seeing is rubble and camel shit and flies and broken pottery and the houses of workers. Today, most of ancient Egypt is gone. Not the temples. Those survive because insecure men building monuments to themselves is an older practice than bread. But we sometimes forget that ancient Egypt was also houses, music, jokes, arguments, taxes, bad smells, shitty neighbors. Most of us remember ancient Egypt the way you'd remember a person through their tombstone and nothing else. Then you come across a place like this. Those aren't random piles of stone. That's a home. That's a doorway. That's a wall someone leaned against. Children were born in this valley and grew up thinking it was the whole world. Meals were cooked, people got drunk, some fell in love here, some died here. The thing that almost never survives, ordinary life, somehow remains. And for a moment, that feels beautiful, almost miraculous, until you realize what that actually means. These people were never meant to be remembered. No pharaoh thought to carve a 40-foot peasant on the cliff face. The desert is simply too dry to rot them and too empty to bother erasing them. So what survives is residue, the leftover scaffolding of an empire's appetite for accessories. A company town at the edge of the world where people spent their whole lives digging green stones out of a mountain. Stones they would never own, for an empire that would never know their names, for a senator's wife who would wear the color once at a dinner party and never think about the hand that dug it. They gave this canyon their whole lives, and the canyon gave them back a grave with no marker. So that's the X on the map. A dead industrial town in a miserable canyon. A hole in the rock where people suffered and dug and found just enough green to keep digging. Until one day there was no one left to dig. No gold, no hidden chamber, no giant tut straddling a treasure pile. Just the quiet end of someone else's dream. Someone who crossed the desert chasing the color green. I know the feeling. Let's see. That's kind of scary. Wow. That is vertical. How do you get down there? That's all collapsed. These mines are definitely not stable. I just came down this hole and then I turn around and look. It just descends straight into the earth. I suspect that those are not entrances, but circulation for air. Surely the Romans built one that was handicap accessible. Where's the flat mine shaft? That looks accessible. I think I can get down there. Should I get down there though? That's the question. Is climbing into a 3,000-year-old emerald mine a bad idea? Huh. There could be snakes and scorpions in there. And a lot of the other mine shafts are collapsed. So I also came all this way. This one doesn't look as dangerous as the other ones. It goes straight. Oh, well, no, it looks like it drops off at the end. There comes a time in every man's life where he must decide whether or not he climbs into the 3,000-year-old emerald mine. This is my time. I'm gonna see if Hamada will stand guard in case I need help. I'm gonna go down. You laughing at me? Do I need to worry about scorpions? Use my lucky? Okay, I will use my lucky. All right, I'm a bit worried about snakes and scorpions, so I'm gonna use this to bang the ground in front of me in case there's a viper hiding. Shukran. What color are the bad scorpions? Both are bad? But there's a bone. Oh yeah, it goes deep. This is narrow. This is where I'm worried about snakes. Down we go. I wish I had a helmet. Hello, vipers. This is tricky. I'm like stuck. I can't see. All right. Oh my God, it's so tight. Whoa. Oh, it's shiny. These are schist veins. This is where emeralds grow. There's emeralds in these rocks. And possibly scorpions. Yeah, look at that. See all that glimmering rock? You can see all the chisel marks. That is crazy. Those marks look so fresh. Yeah, and look, you can even see, that looks like soot from candles. Can you imagine being down here with an oil lamp and sandals, pulling emeralds out of this cave? Oh my God, look at all this pottery here. Look at that. And these schist veins are spectacular. All of the emerald in the Roman Empire came from right here. This is wild. All of it, all of these little burrows, digging out in every direction. I'm satisfied. Oh my God, it goes so deep. Should I go down deeper? I'm just gonna look. I'm just gonna peek. We're gonna find real treasure. Oh my God, it keeps going. That looks like a big ass chamber. There's a possibility that these just drop off 100 feet and it's purely a hole for airflow. However, that looks like it could be not far. The question though is, can I get back up? That's what scares me. I am going to stick my head in this hole and we are going to see how far down it goes. Let's see. Actually, you know what? That sounded like it went down very far. This is an air passage. All right, let's go this way. Oh my God. Deeper into the hole. That's a dead end. Yeah, this goes forever. It goes deeper. It's another fork. I feel like it could be easy to get lost down here. I'm gonna make a cairn. Oh yeah, look at the pottery. Oh, a ton of pottery. All right, one path goes down there. That looks like it might be a deep shaft though. That might be dangerous. Let's go look. This is all collapsed. Huge boulders. That is completely unstable. And my light just died. I could still say, I just can't really film. That's not good. Hamada? Hamada? No. No. Okay, let's backtrack. Okay. These tunnels go so far. Which way did I come from? I don't want to get lost down here. And I feel like I'm flirting with that at this point. Wow, it's so shiny. I don't know if you can see this on camera. These walls are sparkling. That is all schist. I don't see any beryl, which is probably why they kept digging. However, I have a theory. If there are emerald veins in this mountain, I'm willing to bet that if you were to crawl around the top of the mountain after 2,000 years of erosion, we could probably find a schist vein, like just sitting out in the open. And I bet you, maybe, you could find emeralds in it. Let's go back to the surface. I bet you that we can find some veins above ground. Which way did I come from? Is it this way? That goes down further. All right, okay. Hold on. Am I lost? I might be lost. Hamada! Hamada? I think I went down too far. Oh no. Oh no. Wait. Hamada? Hamada? Hello? I should have thought this through. Coming back up is not as easy as going down. Me. Did I come from there? I think I came from this way. Yeah, there's my little cairn. Oh, I see sunlight. How do I get up there? I don't know if my rock climbing abilities can handle that.
If you're new to this channel, I have a hobbyist's background in mining.
I don't see anything.
That same toil fit for a Roman slave, I do it with zeal, for funsies.
Plot twist, this whole mountainside right here, all of this is a vein. It's a schist vein. Look at it, you see it? Because over here and over there is a host rock, and then right down the middle is this slurry of schist. And I bet you, if you were to break this open, you'll find emeralds. That's what they were doing here. All of these buildings and all of these ruins are here because of this.
The archaeologist came here for the ruins. The rare traveler comes for the photos.
Yeah, look at it all.
2,000 years of erosion. And none of them are really looking at the ground. Not the way a miner would.
Schist, inside the schist, doesn't look like anything. Look away, hold on. Yeah. That is an emerald. That is several emeralds. 1, 2, 3. That is a huge one. Now the problem, I don't have a rock hammer. If you were to break this open, you'd be able to pull the emeralds out. But I can't do that. But this is all a water concourse. And I bet you that when it rains, it erodes the schist. Like, look, you can already see it. It's all breaking apart already. And I bet you the host rock disintegrates, and then it frees the emeralds, and the emeralds should flow down the water course. They're called alluvials. I bet you there's alluvial. Yeah, look. Small one. But yeah, that's a little emerald. In this water course, there are emeralds. I think. Maybe. Possibly.
I'm gonna see. Let's see. I have found many alluvial gems following the waterway. Water is flowing this way. The host rock is softer than the emerald that's inside. Where are they? So as the schist gets carried down this canyon, it gets banged around, it gets eroded. That's a steep drop off. And slowly over time, the emerald gets freed from the host rock. So where are they? I don't see anything. They should be here somewhere. Unless I am wrong, which is also possible. Nothing. I could be wrong. I might be an idiot. Oh, there we go. Maybe the real treasure was the friends we made along the way. Oh my God. That is an emerald.
I know what you're thinking. They're not much to look at. And you're right.
Holy shit.
They're small, cloudy, unpolished.
Wow. There's another one.
Compared to the emeralds you get out of Colombia today, they look a little hungover.
Beautiful. This is so cool. I'm so happy.
Even Pliny the Elder complained that they were full of flaws, but he also died sailing into the Vesuvius eruptions, so grain of salt on his judgment.
What's that one? Look at that, that's huge. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Holy shit. Emeralds form in a perfect hexagon, and that is a perfect hexagon. This is amazing. Oh my God. Come on, where are they? If you look on the ground, you'll see little pops of green. Wow. There's another one. That is a Cleopatra emerald. This is so cool. Wow. That is the type of host rock. Wow, there's another one. There's another one. Wow. Yeah, look at this. I have a bag full of emeralds. Some of them might even be aquamarine and serpentine. They're beautiful. Look at that. The inclusions. That is beautiful. It's not gem quality, but that's stunning.
Because those flaws are the part that matter most. Unlike diamonds, emeralds carry inclusions, tiny imperfections known as jardin, a fingerprint left by the place that made them. No two are alike. And since these mines went quiet over 1,000 years ago, genuine stones from here are almost impossible to find. These are the emeralds that pharaohs and emperors thought possessed mystical powers, the emeralds of Cleopatra. And on the collector's market, that type of legacy, scarcity, and provenance is what turns a small handful of cloudy stones into a treasure. The Colombian emerald is a piece of jewelry. The Cleopatra emerald is a piece of history.
I am so happy right now. They're so beautiful. I'm not sure if I can even take these.
I understand their heritage. Tiny, highly portable pieces of cultural property.
It feels kind of wrong taking them.
I bet I could make a very noble speech right now. Talk about humanity's shared inheritance. The type of thing people say standing on a mountain looking wistful.
Also, it's super illegal. If I got caught at Cairo airport with these, that would not be good.
But I understand the tomb robbers. I get why the Victorians stripped the whole desert and shipped it home in crates.
I should take them. So I have emeralds that I've dug up before, but these are emeralds from a 2,000-year-old Egyptian mine linked to Cleopatra. Wow. They're so beautiful.
So here I am, bag full, holding the exact thing I crossed the desert to find. Quest complete. Treasure acquired. Roll credits. Except, that's the part where treasure hunt stories lie to you. Okay, you picture it one way. Wind in your hair, ancient ruins glowing gold at sunset. Maybe a linen shirt. Hans Zimmer blares confidently while you stride into the sunset, scrappy protagonist that you are, and devastatingly handsome too. But in reality, heat, dust in your teeth, pretending you're Australian, a royalty-free soundtrack playing over a sweaty idiot holding a Ziploc of cloudy pebbles in 110-degree heat. Adventure is exhaustion. Indiana Jones was never eating chocolates in a bubble bath. He was covered in snakes, getting dragged behind a moving truck in the desert, and yet we watch that and think, why not me? Because it promises something modern life rarely gives. A brief moment where uncertainty and possibility exist at the exact same time. Where fear, wonder, discomfort, beauty, and meaning all collide in an overwhelming wave. And for a minute, you stop feeling like you're observing your life from behind glass. You feel present, alive, suspended in a version of reality larger and more magnificent than the one you currently know. That's why the most exciting part of any journey is the moment before it begins. And why travel is only glamorous in retrospect. Because more than places, we romanticize the idea of going. We need the map more than we need the treasure. It seems like a good place. We need the desert more than we need the mine. We need the promise that something extraordinary is out there, even if, especially if, we never quite reach it. Bye-bye. I know some people will be angry that I didn't take them, but they know where to look. And they have the map. Can you knock? Oh, geez. Well, now that you're here, come in. Sit down. Not in the tub. That would be weird. I actually have some pretty big news. Thanks to everyone who subscribed. Companies are starting to approach me about sponsorships. This attempted kidnapping is brought to you by Squarespace, which is very flattering. But at least for now, I want to keep making videos in my own weird, sometimes irresponsible way, without worrying about whether following a glow-in-the-dark treasure map into a military zone is brand safe. So instead, I've started a Patreon. The goal isn't just making bonus content, or to finance increasingly luxurious chocolates. The goal is to hire help. Research, editing, animating, the mountain of work that currently has me disappearing for months between videos. Because I'd love to make these videos arrive faster without making them smaller, safer, or less whatever this is. I got bubble bath in my eyeball. If you join, you'll get access to behind-the-scenes material, production updates, early screenings, and access to the original Backpackology stories. There's over 100 of them, going back way before this channel ever existed. But no pressure at all. Simply watching these videos, subscribing, and sharing them has already made all of this possible. But if you'd like to help me make more of them, and get them out before the eventual heat death of the universe, Patreon is now live. I'll see you next time. We're going to Cappadocia. Or is it Cappadocia? How do locals pronounce it?
In Turkish, it is pronounced Cappadocia.
Find out next time. It's Cappadocia. Actually, I don't know if my story is actually possible, so there is a very significant probability that the next episode will be in Georgia. I haven't worked out what I'm going to do there either. Either way, I'll see you somewhere around the Caucasus. You can leave now.